Don't let data get done to you.
It doesn't matter where you start off, it's where you end up getting to.
It's allowed people to build things that you could only dream of before. It has removed barriers that were ever in place for anyone, including educators who have had to pay so much money for custom tools for themselves in the classroom and for districts.
Welcome to Cool Cat Teacher Talk. This episode is Data-Driven Schools, Driving Learning and Improving Relationships.
Ever wondered how remarkable teaching happens? Find out right now at Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis. Get insights from top educators, tech tips, and inspiration to elevate your teaching.
I'm Vicki Davis, and today we're talking about data-driven schools, but not in the way you might think. We're not just talking about test scores and spreadsheets. We're talking about what happens when educators use data to actually see their students, to build tools instead of buying them, and to create a school culture where numbers serve people instead of the other way around. Today, we have three remarkable guests for you. AJ Juliani has led 150 educators in building their own AI-powered dashboards. Victoria Setaro will change the way you think about what data even is. And Dr. Deborah Dennie, a National Principal of the Year finalist for 2026, will show you what a decade of data-driven leadership looks like when it's done with heart. Let's get started. First, I'd like to give a quick news item that's relevant to everything we're going to talk about today. On March 31st, Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, they accidentally published over 500,000 lines of their own source code to a public website. Now, it was a packaging mistake, and this was their code, not user data and not student data. But within hours, bad actors were already creating fake downloads laced with malware. This happened after we recorded our interviews for this episode, but I wanted to mention it because it underscores something that my first guest is going to talk about: why data privacy has to be baked into everything we do with AI in schools. If one of the biggest AI companies in the world can accidentally leak their own code, imagine what happens when we're not careful with student information. So with that news tidbit in mind, let's hear from AJ Juliani.
Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis.
Today I'm talking with my friend AJ Juliani. We first met when we worked on a project called the Flat Classroom Project together. It was in Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat. Remarkable innovator, educator, and also a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author. He's an instructor at UPenn's Graduate School of Education and one of the most trusted voices in education innovation. AJ has been leading the charge on helping schools use AI tools for data analysis. He's back on the show to share how over 150 educators in his national U.S. cohort are building their own AI solutions instead of buying expensive ones. If you've ever wondered what AI-powered data analysis actually looks like in a real school district, this will be the conversation for you. Last time you were on the show, we talked about meaningful and relevant learning, the traffic light protocol, tools like Magic School, but now you've gone even further. You have led 150 educators through building their own AI tools. So what was the leap from use AI tools to build your own?
Vicki, thanks again for having me on. Love the show and love being a part of it. As we've all evolved over the years of using AI tools, one of the things that we've started to see with newer tools, the one that I use all the time is Claude Code. The ChatGPT version would be Codex. Is it's taken someone who has a little bit of programming knowledge. I can mess around with HTML and CSS and a little JavaScript here or there. And it's allowed people to build things that you could only dream of before. It has removed barriers that were ever in place for anyone, including educators who have had to pay so much money for custom tools for themselves in the classroom and for districts. And so what I've done over the last year here is really help educators who want to use it with a purpose and intentionality of creating things for their classroom and district to show them how to do that, walk them through some protocols and give them steps to get there.
Walk us through what happened in that cohort when educators who were not coders sat down to build an AI dashboard with Claude Code, Replit, or whatever. What surprised you about that?
But what was really surprising is the first thing that we did was we talked about what the problem was. And the problem was in schools, there's all these different data sets. There's conversations in PLCs around data, but there's never any hub to see everything and to ask questions of the data. Now it's just like I'm pulling spreadsheets or I'm pulling some graphs, but I can't interact with the data. Everybody brought up this is a very big problem that we have, and we're spending a lot of time, a lot of human capital and time doing that. And so we first went and we prompted Claude saying, what are 10 ways that we can use data effectively given our school districts or job title, that type of thing? And so it gave us some different things. And then we said, we took that and we brought that over to Claude Code. If you've ever used Claude before or used ChatGPT or Gemini, the coding part is kind of right part of it. And you can just say, hey, I want to build a dashboard for my district focusing on these X number of things. Help me walk through this process and ask me questions to tailor specifically what this data dashboard should look like. From there, Claude really does the work. It acts as an interviewer, interviewing the educator, getting feedback and insight on them. And that's the real key that I think people miss along the way. You don't have to prompt it everything. It can ask you questions and then take your answers to create it. So what that did was the teachers got interviewed. The Claude Code asked them questions and built that first version of the data dashboard. From there, the old way would do it, you'd have to go into the code and analyze some things and that type of thing. Now you could just have a conversation with Claude Code. People call it vibe coding. It's very much a conversation saying, you really like this piece of the dashboard. Can you change this? Can we look at this? And what we then did was say, we want to add that question feature a part of the dashboard. Instead of teams just seeing the data and just seeing the connections, why not build that conversation feeder right into it? So PLC teams, district teams, communities can look at district data dashboards and actually have conversations with the data, visualize it in different ways. And I will tell you, Vicki, people were mind blown. It was one of those things where the entire cohort wanted to go and work on this with their team right away, dive into it, and saw the power of what Claude Code could do for anybody who is using it the right way.
Back up, some districts are huge and they have a lot of data, including a lot of personally identifiable information, that PID, that we have to be so careful about. Was Claude Code working with live data or small data sets, or was it anonymized, or how did that part work?
One of the things that we did after we created MVB, that minimum viable product, the next step was, hey, how can we make this have the best data privacy? What practices do we need to kind of put into place? And a couple things really popped up. Number one, the data that we're using, even if it's from the district, was not uploaded anywhere. Files are read entirely by the browser and sent once to the AI for analysis. Nothing is saved in the server, database, or disk. Once you close or refresh the page, the data is gone. Is data encrypted when you're using this type of thing? Well, yes, all communication between your browser and the server use HTTPS, so it encrypts the data. Your file can't be intercepted while being sent. Who can see the data that you upload? So it's sent normally through something like OpenAI's API for analysis, and they don't use API data for model training, but it does pass through their servers. So that would be the one kind of data thing that you'd have to look at it as a district. Should you upload real student data? Well, this is our big thing that I think everybody should talk about. And that's, you have to de-identify the data before uploading. Replace student names with labels, remove columns with addresses or phone numbers or identifying data. You're going to get meaningful analysis without exposing that sensitive information. This is one of those things that we could ask questions, create it this way, and make sure that privacy was of the utmost importance in what we were making.
It almost seems too good to be true. Like, did people immediately start making decisions and have epiphanies and just go, oh my goodness?
Almost immediately. And I think the biggest thing that people had questions about were the privacy concerns. And they had to bring that to their IT department and go through the process of approving it and talking to the school board. But I'll tell you, what we talked about was the privacy of doing it in-house is so much better than giving it to a company that you don't know what they're going to do with it and how they're going to use your data. The flexibility of what you could build, what you could create. I'm sure I can give a link to some different things of what we did, but what I saw, the number one aha moment that people had, Vicki, was they realized that they were in control of what this looked like, of how much time they spent on it, of how they build it, and how they could connect different departments already working on this. And I think a lot of money saved in the process.
Did they get any pushbacks from their boards or their IT? You're not a coder. You don't know what you're doing. And you're talking to AI. We know AI is here. It's not going anywhere. But there are a lot of folks who just have this real sense of distrust that say, no, things got to work the way they've always worked. We got to hire an out vendor. They got to be coders, all this sort of thing.
I think that pushback happened for a good number of people, and they had to have conversations and had to do their homework. Everything that I just said about the privacy and that type of stuff, you got to bring the documentation, you got to do your homework, that type of thing. But I will say, when you're talking with districts right now and you can save money, and not have to go through that whole RFP process and with the vendors and everything, the business office perked up. The IT department perked up. There was a lot of meaningful conversations with the school board because schools are strapped for money. They're strapped for funds. And a lot of times they feel handcuffed by some of these programs and software that they are connected with. Vicki, it's not just for data dashboards. This is for curriculum housing, right? This is for creating all different types of lesson plans and housing information. There's so much you can do with it. I think we've only hit the tip of the iceberg, and AI is here to help us in that way.
So AJ, as you know, when our lives change, a lot of emotions come up. What are kind of some of the emotions that when educators in your cohort realize they could build tools that used to cost district thousands, if not tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars? Like, what kind of emotions happened with these educators?
Yeah, I would say the first one is overwhelm. The reason we did the cohort is the whole idea was AI ready school leaders. This notion that AI is all around, as George Couros says, it's like water. So are we going to learn how to swim or just be afraid of it? And I think when we talk about that analogy, a lot of times people get stuck being like, well, I don't know how to swim myself, right? So how do we get people the knowledge where they can start swimming and learning it themselves so then they can help other people swim in those AI waters? And so there's a lot of overwhelm around it. But then I think the next step after overwhelm was, this is actually not that complicated. And when I'm using AI as a planning partner, a creative partner, and I'm thinking of it in that way instead of just a tool, and I'm having conversations with it, a lot of things open up. A couple years ago, people were talking about how we have to have the exact right prompt and these different types of things. And with a lot of these tools now, that's not the case. You need to have conversations. You need to ask questions. You need to have the AI ask you questions. And so after the overwhelm came a little bit sense of relief and excitement. And I want to show people this because most of the educators that I know that they knew were worried about it for the wrong reasons and thinking it was like when the internet started and I had to figure out dial-up internet and you had to be like a hacker to use these different tools. You don't have to. You just have to be a person that knows how to have conversations and have a little bit of I think the most important skill right now is discernment. Discernment of when to use it, how to use it, and where it's applicable. You can't build that discernment skill if you're not using the tool. And that's something that I think we really learned in the cohort.
So as you talk about discernment, what is the biggest mistake you see schools making right now when it comes to AI and student data?
I would say the biggest mistake is that we like outsourcing everything and then saying that's their problem. We're sending it to this AI company or to this company, or we're going to use this vendor or this tool, and we'll just kind of, worry about it there. I like to really kind of keep things in-house as much as possible, where we can create custom tools for our purposes, where we're not at the beck and call of what the vendor decides and their kind of conversations and how they raise price. And then with the student privacy thing, I think still the biggest concern that I see, Vicki, is that we have kids who are under 18 just using the regular version of ChatGPT, using the regular version of these tools, and the privacy is terrible. There's so many red flags there. And so I think those are the conversations that people have to have is, well, what are some safeguards? Very easy ones we can put into place. And when you build in-house tools, you can put those safeguards into place in the creation of those tools.
So last time we talked about how a lot of schools pretended like AI didn't exist. But the pendulum, as you said, has swung. What is the danger of rushing into AI adoption without a strategy?
It's the same problem that we had when people maybe rushed into one-to-one tech initiatives. If your school is still built on a compliance-based model, tech only fuels that compliance, whether it was laptops or it's AI. And a lot of times it becomes digital pacifiers. You're rushing to use AI for everything. Do you want a world where AI is helping your teachers plan tasks? The AI is helping students do the tasks. And then the AI is helping your teachers grade the tasks. Now we've just removed any human from it possible. This idea of discernment, it's the pause. It's the real pause. It's the conversation of, well, why are we adopting this? What's it helping us with? Is it just helping us save time, or is it helping us with better pedagogy? Is it just helping us save money, or is it helping with a better learning experience? Is it just helping us look at data more, or is it helping us with making decisions better? And so those are the discernment kind of questions that we have to have. When we rush in, we miss the pause.
We talked about 4 essentials: human, social, meaning-centered, and language-based. That was really talking about the classroom. So how do these 4 things apply with data? Because it kind of sounds like you're still speaking that language of this human and social and meaning-centered and language-based.
The first thing is when you're looking at data, it should tell a human story. It should tell a human story. The numbers should relate to something human. We should do it in social cohorts. Looking at data by yourself, you're going to miss something along the way. So we should have conversations in social cohorts. It should also be meaning-based. What's the point of looking at the data? Is it helping us with the 10 different things I talked about, which is it helping us with student achievement, with attendance and chronic absenteeism, with equity and subgroup analysis, intervention effectiveness, formative assessments, benchmark data, teacher and classroom data, enrollment capacity planning, school climate data, budget, resource allocation? These are the meaning behind data. The last piece is language-based. Understanding that using AI is becoming a language unto itself. As you would learn another language, it's understanding, how do I use this? What do I use it for? What are the conversations that I can have with it? Just that one thing I talked about, Vicki, of having it ask you questions to get a better understanding of your purpose completely flips the script and lets you use that language.
So one thing we talk about, I'm a database data nerd, kind of like you are, is that we've got these silos of data, right? And yeah, we have student ID number to be able to relate them, but it sounds like being able to export the data out of all your systems, some of which don't let you, is going to be really a strategic issue as districts do use vendors. Can I access the data? Is there a unique number that I can use to aggregate it with my other data as we move forward? So what are the questions we need to be asking existing vendors to move forward in a world where we can customize our data dashboards for our schools?
The technical conversation would be around APIs and MCPs. I don't think we actually need to have that technical conversation right now with vendors. I think the main thing we can say is, can you give me a CSV? If you can't give me a CSV, it's not a vendor I should work with, because everybody can read a CSV.
Mhm.
All the AI tools that we do, we can pull in from the CSV. It is just a spreadsheet, and you can use it in any Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, any of them. So that's my initial conversation. Hey, when we export the data, can we get it in a CSV?
CSV stands for comma separated values. It's a basic kind of thing.
As long as you can get it in that format, then you can connect all the different dots. And one of the tools that we used to build our data dashboards so that they were running autonomously was Zapier. I don't know if your audience has heard of that, but basically what Zapier is a tool that connects. It does if then this, right? So like if a spreadsheet is updated or a form is updated of enrollment, then send it to my data dashboard automatically and update things. So now I'm not having to do that manually in the process. And this is where AI helps again, is that it removes that manual uploading that we've had to do previously. Now we can create these automated processes where the data and dashboard is updated all the time.
This does have to make people nervous. It does. All it takes is somebody who, let's say they don't join your cohort. They just hear us talking and they say, I'm going to go do this today. We have to caution people, don't we? Like, what's your caution of like just jumping into the wild west of AI dashboards without some thought?
The biggest caution is when you're using real data and not de-identifying it. If you do that, you put yourself in a world of trouble with SIPA, COPA, all the different types of privacy laws out there. The big piece here for all of us is we have to go through the proper channels. We have to build policies that support this. We have to get it approved by administration, approved by boards, that type of process. But what a great thing to pilot if we do, to show people what this looks like, to get some feedback from the community, to save some money along the way. But the caution is definitely that when you use AI as a tool to create, you are then also the co-creator. If you're just using AI to give you information and you're using it for that information, maybe you can blame the AI. But if you're creating something with the tool, then you are the co-creator. You can't just blame the tool, and you have to go through those proper channels. And I think that's a really important kind of piece for people to see. But I would say that anybody who's going through this process, there is so much out there explaining how to go through the process the right way. In the cohort, we use so many different resources of people that have done this before me, before us, and some really good use cases. So whether or not you go through the cohort and check it out or you do it on your own, you still have to go through those proper processes and make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's.
AJ, if you could travel back in time to AJ, first day you looked at data dashboards, what would you say to yourself?
Think bigger. I had such a small perspective on how I personally used it as a director of learning or a school leader or a classroom teacher, to think a lot bigger. The automation piece I didn't think about right away. All the different ways that I could use it to help my students, I didn't think about it the right way. One school, Vicki, just to give you a quick example, and I didn't think about this. This came from our cohort. They connected their gradebook, their attendance, and some of their teacher feedback tools inside of Google Classroom. And what it did was it started flagging when a kid was absent for a couple of days or wasn't turning things in or getting some feedback in some of the classroom right away for the teacher and student to have a conference and a conversation. How many times when we have these large classes or all these different types of things on our plate, does some of those warning signs go unnoticed? And it could last weeks instead of, in this case, just a couple of days before there's a conversation. They said it has completely transformed what the instruction looks like, because now students know if they're missing something, they're going to have a conversation with their teacher right away about what's going on at home or in their life, or these different types of things. Are they sick or something along those lines? But it catches it a lot of times before humans could, because we have so much on our plates as educators. And so this is just some of the ways that I think I would have wanted to think bigger than just, create a cool looking dashboard.
Quick intervention is one of the best things you can do as a teacher. And when you have a tool that flags it for you in some ways, because when you have some teachers following up and some teachers not, I tend to be one of those really quick. I got one on my list today, really quick follow-uppers, but sometimes that can cause you to get grief for that, because maybe others aren't. And so that early intervention and having a tool flag it for you is really in many ways a gift. You're flagged on my dashboard. Hey, let's talk about it. Do we have a problem? Not that we want to blame something else, but reality is that when that absenteeism starts, you got to intervene really quick, or else absenteeism can turn into a failing grade really quickly.
I think, sometimes the kid just gets in a hole that they feel like they can't dig out of. Teachers wondering why did this happen, that type of thing, where if we just had a conversation 2-3 days into the problem or issue, could have solved a lot of them, or at least caught it earlier and put it on your radar earlier. Like you said, Vicki, on a flag brings up to the teacher, oh, I got to have a conversation. Now, it's just a little prompt to you as well. It allows administrators to get involved as well, because everybody can kind of see the system. So counselors can have conversations, that type of thing. And it was just something I didn't think about right away. And, one of the people in our cohort took it this way, and that's what they did. They were working with their counselors to create something like this. And it's just had a profound impact already.
Fantastic. Talking about data, dashboards, and AI, I have to ask you this question, though, as we leave. What's your response to those who claim AI can replace teachers?
It can't really replace teachers if we're doing the act of teaching as a human. It can replace teachers if we are thinking about just the things like lesson planning, grading, those different types of things. But it can't replace the human conversations. It can't replace the mentorship. It can't replace the motivation. I talk about this a lot. When you look at a lot of the research, Hattie's meta-analysis, all these different types of things, this idea of Desi's self-determination theory, of the idea of a student wanting to, from intrinsic or intrinsic motivation, wanting to learn, that's a teacher's role, right? Making that curriculum come to life, bringing it to all of our students, being able to kind of see what inspires or interests a kid, having a conversation with the kid and saying, oh, they like this sport or they like this character or they like this music, and connecting meaningful and relevant. It can't replace teachers as mentors and people that are really helping students. It can actually give us more time to do those things. The quote that I like to say, Vicki, is there's this big quote that said, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes, not my art and writing. And I think about that. What is the laundry and dishes of our role in education? How can AI help us with those laundry and dishes so we can spend more time doing the things that we want to do with our students and taking things off our plate to free up time? And so I think it's much more likely to do that instead of replacing teachers, unless the robots come and then all bets are off. Who knows what's going to happen at that point in time?
Well, if you look at all the articles about the 20-somethings who are struggling to keep their jobs, it's all about emotional intelligence
100%.
and showing up for work, having attendance, and being able to handle criticism. All that emotional intelligence piece that is so vital is what we really are missing when we go screens only. So, AJ Juliani, tell us how you can find information on your next cohort.
I actually run the cohorts through Maven. If you ever heard of Maven.com, it's an amazing platform where you got some of the best Google and Microsoft and Apple engineers and all different professors at Stanford, everything. They got little old AJ on there doing a course as well. So you can find it on maven.com, or you can go to my website where I link to it at ajjuliani.com. Both are easy ways to find.
Thank you for coming on the show, AJ.
Thanks so much for having me, Vicki. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to connect.
Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis.
AJ showed us the power of building your own data tools, but what kind of data should we even be looking at? Our next guest, Victoria Setaro, has a framework that will change how you think about every piece of data in your school. Welcome, remarkable educators. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Victoria Setaro. She is a pioneer in making data analytics very approachable in her BOCES region. She's been using data in creative ways to help teachers and school administrators improve the learning experience for our students. If you are wondering if data can make your job easier and your classroom more effective, stay tuned to this episode. Thanks for coming on the show, Victoria.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here today.
So, Victoria, could you break down for us how data analytics can help a regular teacher in their classroom? And can it actually help us understand students better?
Okay, I love that you're asking this, and I'm going to frame it in a very particular way. Data is sometimes something that gets done to a teacher, but I'm going to invite all educators, not just teachers, to step into the driver's seat and don't let data get done to you. So I want you to think critically about the array of data that you have. I work in New York State, and we have no shortage of data. I'm sure any state that's listening right now, there's no shortage of data. It might not be good data. It might not be accurate, but there's no shortage of it. And then a lot of it, it's not actionable. If you're a classroom teacher and you're thinking, how do I make data actionable? Or how do I perform some analysis? What I would urge you to do is to think about demographics, attendance, graduation data, any achievement data that might come out from your classroom as cold data. And then I want you to think about all the stuff that you know how to be either a really good leader or a really great teacher in the classroom. So you know when your little Victoria is in a bad mood. You know when little Victoria's mother, you're not going to talk to her because she's not approached right now, right? So you know heaps of real people data. And I'm going to call that warm data. There's a few different ways that we can get into about how to glean that warm data and systematize all the things that you know to make your life easier.
I just read in the Washington Post today an article that said 33% of U.S. students have chronic absenteeism. which means they missed more than a month. But they shared a tiny tidbit of data, I thought, that I emailed our administrators, and it said they have found that half of students who miss 2 to 4 days in September will miss more than a month the whole school year, even though we might think, oh, attendance. Would you call attendance warm data?
The outcome of it, like the number of days that a child misses, that's a cold data piece. All the many reasons why, and it is very complicated. Chronic absenteeism goes from everything from like family issues, not having a car, health, wellness, patterns of chronic absenteeism in the classroom, in the district, for the family, even something as simple as laundry. So in one of the districts that I'm working in, we do a lot for chronic absenteeism. When you start getting under, and you have to listen to the stories of the families to actually get the good, warm data to be able to act. Unless you know that everyone's problem is getting medical care, if that's the issue, you might consider putting a clinic into or get a van near school to remedy the problem. But if that's not your problem, those numbers can't tell you the underlying causes. So to me, you need a cold data piece for the number, and then the warm is like the underneath the why.
Oh, I love that, because I actually, in there, it mentioned laundry, that some kids don't go to school if they don't have enough clothes and if their clothes aren't cleaned. And I was like, okay, I can think of students that applies to. I think that is actually an issue. So that's fascinating. You've got the cold data, which would be like the days they miss, but then the warm data is like, why is this really happening?
Yes. And then you can make clusters of the data within it and really look at it and be like, okay, 10 students are laundry, right? What's going to be our expenditure? How can we remedy it for them? Can we work with a local laundromat? Can we bring in a washer dryer at our school? Can we do those kinds of things? Or is it just a matter of like they're kindergarten and they have no one to walk them? So can we do a walking bus around? So it's like, what are the actions that we can take? You would never know unless you asked, right? So for breaking, I would say just one of two ways. You can do a simple checklist. So you would say, who's coming in late? And you can ask them why. Hey, why are you late? What's going on? Like, how can I help? Something. The other way that I would urge a school or a grade level to do is to host focus groups, right? To kind of really take the temperature of the grade. We have the highest hopes for our students, right? That's why we get into this. We want them to exceed expectations that they didn't even know they had, right? That's where we want them to live. But I will tell you this little story. I was working in a different school district in the Hudson Valley, and there was a focus group that we were holding for a different reason. But this girl, she's top of the class, okay? So she's taking every advanced placement course, college credits, everything is 95 and above. She's one of these students. The English courses, the question was just simply like, what do you like in school? What do you like? These very like generic kind of softball questions. But it was asked of her, and she said, you know what? I really hate my ELA courses, Maddie's courses. I don't like it. I'm not into it, whatever her thing was. But you would never know because she was so compliant. She showed up like a typical good student. The guidance counselors took that information, those warm data points that you would never get. The achievement showed this is one of the top students. They built her senior year schedule on math and science, which is a beautiful thing, right? And then she had a better school experience in the end. I think it's about changing the paradigm of what we think data is, taking the cold data that we usually have and really, really customizing, individualizing, and making schools for the people who are there, right?
You talk about the warm data and why students do what they do. We're all interrelated. Sometimes we just meet by our department, but I think of a time, a young lady who was so talented and gifted. She was great at language arts. She was great at art. But math literally just about sent her off the deep end. Every day that she had a math test, I learned that she had to tell me, because she would literally be so upset that I would have to give her timeout break for 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of my class every day because she was coming out of that class. And I asked him, I was like, hey, this next year, if she could have a break after math, then it won't negatively impact her next class. Now, I know you can't do that for every single kid, but sometimes there are patterns. It's not just one student. And changes can happen because we are interrelated and not everything is something that a teacher can control.
A lot of times they'll look at a system or a scoring profile of a cohort and be like, that's the bell curve. But I think we really need to push ourselves to design to the edges. So you had that student that needed the break. But how many would benefit from the break? Or you just being flexible and doing it for that one student, you might not have another student for another 5 years. But when that student comes around, you'll be like, oh, I got you. I got this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. That's an excellent strategy to memorialize and share with the team. To me, that's all part of data.
For the math teacher to notice that the way she tests stresses the kids out and maybe they need to finish 10 minutes early and decompress. Let's talk about privacy for just a minute because we've packed a lot in here, but privacy is a concern anytime we talk about data. So how can we use data analytics ethically to protect the privacy of our individual students?
A lot of data work that happens in schools is grade level. And there's a lot of demographics and presuppositions that you would put on those kids because you know them so well. In light of data privacy, I would suggest redacting names, dealing with cohorts only, eliminating homerooms. So if I'll use third grade again, you have 5 homerooms, 3 homerooms, I would suggest looking at the whole cohort, looking for a larger problem of practice that you're going to be addressing, or with a few different teaching strategies to remedy what the kids are showing up with that year or in that particular unit. Another way too is to make sure that free app that's like awesome that you want to use, like your basic EdLaw 2D compliant, knowledge. You don't put your students' names into apps. Always check if you have a tech director.
Good isn't good enough if better is possible. Victoria Setaro, thank you for coming on the show. There's a lot of data at all of our fingertips. Having these conversations is just so important.
Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis.
Victoria just showed us how to think about data differently, warm and cold. My next guest is a principal who has been living this for a decade, and her results speak for themselves. Today, we're talking with Dr. Deborah Dennie, principal of Leonardtown Middle School in St. Mary's County, Maryland. Dr. Dennie has led her school for 10 years and has been named a 2026 NASSP National Middle Level Principal of the Year finalist. She's Maryland's Middle School Principal of the Year. We're going to talk a lot about data-driven leadership and how it can transform a school culture and put students on the path to success. Debbie, you started your teaching career in 1986, St. Vincent in the Grenadines. Can you take me back to that moment and what drew you into education and what was it like teaching in those early years?
At that point in time, I didn't think I would get to teach because I was so young. And growing up in St. Vincent in the Grenadines, once I graduated from high school, the pathway to teaching is a bit different from the way it is in the U.S. And so I was told way back then that, oh, you were too young to teach. I, believe it or not, ended up being a shoe department manager for a year until the Ministry of Education called me and I started to teach in mid-year. I was 17-year-old then, teaching 15-year-old boys. It was a task, but I stayed in it. I have always wanted to teach. I think that was the drive to continue along those parts. I did take a break once I had my girls and I stayed home with them. And then I went back out, when my husband and I moved here to the U.S. So it's been a journey and it's been a pleasant one. I take everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And there hasn't been a whole lot of uglies, really, because I enjoy what I do.
And you're a middle years. That's not the easiest season of life to lead a school for,
No, it gives us a run for our money.
Debbie, you've been at Leonardtown Middle School for a decade now. So when you first walked through those doors as a principal, what did you see that needed to change? And what did you see that you wanted to protect?
Leonardtown Middle School there wasn't a whole lot for me to change at that point in time. To be honest, my first year, I came in and I thought, I'm just going to look and I'm going to listen. I didn't change a thing because I did not want to be the principal to come in and just take away everything that everybody had for however long, because my predecessor had been here 8 to 9 years. That wasn't my goal, to come in and simply change things. I needed to assess. I needed to look. I needed to listen, see if there was anything that I needed to, quote unquote, put my stamp on. So really and truly, I didn't come in with the intention of changing anything right off the bat. I thought I would look at it, assess, and in that first year, if I saw anything that I needed to change, then I would do so gradually.
I love that humble attitude. Now, when people hear data-driven leadership, sometimes they picture spreadsheets, test scores, but I kind of feel like talking to you, Debbie, that's something deeper. What does data-driven leadership look like in your school on a Tuesday morning, for example?
On a Tuesday morning, let's just pick any morning. Well, here's the thing. Yes, we are all about the data. We get here in St. Mary's County, our assessment and accountability department, they provide us with all of the data that we need. But sometimes it's not just, for me at least, it's not just about that instructional data. Yes, I use that instructional data. Every 2 weeks, I look at our pass back. I look to see how the kids progressing. I look to see what that means for the teachers as well, because it's not just about the kids. We have to have the teachers on board. So I will go through and I will take a look at that data with my assistant principals and my resource teacher. And we go through all of these. We look to see, okay, there are so many Fs. This is the average because assessment and accountability would send us that average for all of the content areas, an overall average, and then broken down by content. Even the unified arts. We look at all of these things. And I look to see, all right, maybe in sixth grade core math, the average percentage of Fs would be 8 or 9%, but as a building average, it's 5%. Then I look to see who is over that building average. If you're above that building average, then you're going to be hearing from me. I'll be copying the resource teacher, and then I send out some pointed questions. Why is there this gap? What are we doing for those kids who are failing? What are we doing for those kids? Are we reteaching? Are we looking at the standards? All of these things we look at. However, it's not just about that. For me, it goes beyond that instructional piece. We're a school, so it has to be about the instruction. What it goes to is, you talked earlier about the culture, and that means you have to be present, because maybe the reason why X number of kids have so many Fs because they're not coming to school. So we have to get them into school. So when I think about data, it's not just that instructional piece, the A's, the B's, the F, the county formative assessments or the state testing. Yes, all important. We're not going to get anywhere if we don't pay attention to those. We also have to look at those other things that make up a part of the culture of the building, because if the kids are not present, they're not learning. So it means that part of that data, I also have to look at the attendance data. I also have to look at the discipline data. I have to look at so many pieces of data. So I don't want to get it lost in the sense that it's just about the instructional data, because part of what makes that instructional data what it is depends on the others, the attendance data, the discipline data, for goodness sakes, the cultural climate data from the teachers and the kids. So for me, it's all encompassing. And that is something that we pay close attention to for discipline. And we start out the school year paying a lot of attention on discipline data, actually, because we figure if we don't want to lose time addressing discipline concerns. So we look at the discipline data. We look at where we were last year at that time. And we actually pose a challenge to the kids. If you can better what we looked like on paper last year, and most of the times I focus on like the top 5 areas that we got the discipline data in. I look at the top 5 most challenging areas and we address those. If they look better by end of October, well, guess what? Everybody gets to participate in a classic car show. We invite our community members who own classic cars. They come in, they line up their cars. The student leaders come out, they assist with everything, but every grade level gets to spend some time outside looking at classic cars, and they actually judge for the best in show. The community loves it, the kids love it, and we, the teachers and administrators, love it because we know they get to do that because they're behaving. It's trying to keep that culture, that climate, that academics, everything rolling to one. So that's how we use the data.
And you seem to be great with the community. Didn't you have an attendance emphasis with Miss Maryland? Did you have something with her?
Yes, we did. And it was fabulous because we had the classic car show in the fall and so on. And everybody knows it's getting to be springtime. It is. The winter, you're cooped up. We have so many snow days. We lose time. And then it's coming close and everybody wants spring. We want it. But then we have a few warm days and the kids are like, oh, I'm going to stay home. Or it snowed and it's too cold outside. We're just going to stay home. So we try to incentivize. And that's one of the things. I incentivize everything. We thought at first that we invite a lot of the professional teams in the Maryland, Virginia, DC area, but that didn't go as well as we wanted it to. And then I thought, well, maybe we should stay a little close to home. Let's see what we can get. I invited the sheriff to come in to judge the doors at the beginning of Olympics. We had an Olympic theme going on for the doors, a door decoration. And so he came in with the assistant superintendent to be judges. And while he was here, I'm like, you know what? We have an attendance thing going. How about you give a shout out to the kids, record yourself, telling them about the importance of attendance. And if we get to 94%, the magic number based on the state, you give them a shout out. So he did. And it was really great. I'm like, oh, well, I could expand on this. My media specialist, she taught Miss Maryland in elementary school. And she said, well, could she come and visit? I said she could come and visit, only if she's going to talk about attendance. We did that, but I thought, I'll just ask. And I asked, can you do a video for us? 30 seconds, giving a shout out to them because they made 94%. We had a weekly incentive and it's posted in the main hallway to see who was winning. And she said, of course. So we did that. And then we put a picture of her up on our TV in the main hallway and just question marks, her picture and question marks. And every morning we had trivia. What school did she go to? Could you guess which teacher in the building taught her? Every morning it was a different thing leading up to her visit. And then we had a grand assembly where she came and talked about SMART goals, attendance. It was great. And we've been averaging. We even got a shout out from the superintendent because at our administrative meetings, because we were the only the only secondary school to make 94%. We're trying to keep it at that level. But like I said, we look at data as an all-encompassing thing.
Attendance is just such an important component. Here in the state of Georgia, where I am, we have a legislator who's looking at passing legislation that if you don't attend at least 90% of the time, that you won't be able to play sports. If you look at kids who aren't in their seats, they can't learn. And that attendance is just so very important everywhere. It's really an issue. So that's fascinating that you're doing that. But this is the other thing I like about what you're saying. Here you have data, which is numbers, but then you have people. You've talked openly and publicly about collaborative planning time. Tell us about that at your school.
Well, again, remember, incentivize everything. The county offers collaborative planning funds, and that is something that I tell the staff. I encourage the staff. It is a permanent fixture in my weekly memo to the staff because I expect them to be able to collaborate. We've even gone as far as to switch our schedules so that the content areas have the planning at the same time, so that if they wish to collaborate at grade level, across grade levels, that this is something that they can actually do. So we kind of build it in or during the school day, but even outside of the school day, they can collaborate for a stipend. And I said, you know what? I don't care if you do it at Starbucks, if you do it at night when you've put your kids to sleep. Just remember, you can't collaborate by yourself. So I expect you to do it. If we have the ELA teachers wanting to collaborate with the special ed department, you do it. It could be cross-curricular as long as you show me how you're spending that time, how you intend to make these things mesh, the two content areas. Maybe it's the co-teachers. Maybe the co-teachers want to collaborate on a unit because we have the special ed teacher coming in to help. How is she going to work with the small group that she has? And it may be that she isn't working with the small group of IEP carriers, but that the gen ed teacher could spend time with them while the special ed teacher works with others. So could be helping another teammate, could be department-wise. As long as you collaborate and you show me how you're doing this to meet the needs of our students, that is what it's all about. And so you can get a stipend, or if you could use it during the day, it's a problem to do it during the day outside of planning because we don't have the substitutes. It's hard to find substitutes. That could be a problem. We make it work for us. So whether it's first thing in the morning, which is sometimes difficult because we are very early school, our kids get off the bus at 7:05 a.m. Most of the times it's either to do it during the workday or after work, the evenings, or even on the weekends. But my staff, I could not do the things that I do without the support of my staff. And they've been great. They go along with all my harebrained ideas and my assistant principals.
So let's talk about what your staff says about you. They say that you are a mentor and you're an advocate who empowers your staff to grow as leaders. Can you tell me about a teacher? You don't have to name a name, but just think of a story in your mind that you have watched grow under your leadership, a story that kind of captures what this work means to you and what it means to mentor and grow leaders.
I do have such a person in mind. Everybody here is going to know because this staff member came on when I came here 10 years ago. And we both started here at Leonardtown Middle School at the same time. She was an ELA teacher. And while she loved being here and she was a leader among her teammates, she left to spread her wings. And she told me she was leaving. And I encouraged her, leave, because sometimes say if you love something, you let it go. And if it's meant to be, it'll come back. And so she went to one of the high schools and did her thing there. And even during that time, we stayed in touch. She talked about wanting to be an administrator, a leader. And I'm like, okay, I can help. So we meet after school and we will go through. I will tell her what it meant to be a leader, an administrator. We would even do mock interviews in case she ever got to that point and so on. And later she applied and she's able to come back. And now she is an administrator in the building. I love doing this. It's not just her do it for secretaries, but like the secretary to the principal. She was a food service worker in my building, and now she's my secretary. Another one was a building service worker, and now she's my attendance secretary. I try to grow my staff. I have others who I'm mentoring right now, teachers who want to go on to that next level. I've mentored APs who want to be principals because it's just giving back. If I can help the next generation of leaders to come through the ranks and be there for the kids, which is what we're here for, then I would have done my job. And we do it one at a time. I love that mentoring the teachers, the administrators, the para-educators. I love doing that because it pays off. And when kids could see that it doesn't matter where you start off, it's where you end up getting to, that means a lot to them.
So Debbie, as we finish up, teaching's hard. Administrating's hard. These are all difficult things. What keeps you going when you have that hard day and you have those voices in your head and you have that angry parent you dealt with or whatever was just difficult? Because, sometimes things just happen. But look at you at the end of your day. How do you laugh when you're hurting?
My girls, my family, my daughters, I would text them. Sometimes it's just a text. They'll say, "What's up now, Mom?" I'll just I give one of those, send a Bitmoji or something with an angry face, and they will encourage me. My girls, my husband, my brother, they're my backbone. When I have an absolutely awful day, I know I can just call them, text them, even if I'm in the moment and I just send a quick text and they send back something and it's all good. On the drive home, they will call to just follow up to say, hey, how did things work out? Yeah, that kind of thing. And just having them there to talk to, knowing that I can just fall back on that. They will listen. That helps me out a whole lot.
So what's your word to the teachers who are hurting and struggling and tired? What's your words of encouragement to them?
Find that person that you can just talk to. Because sometimes just talking, it doesn't have to be that you're venting, just letting it off your chest. Yes, we want that mental health piece, and we can't say enough about that. But that's part of the mental health, being able to release, being able to talk to somebody. So find that person who, at the end of the day, you can just say, oh my goodness, I had such an awful day. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And they're there for you. They have your back. When everything else, when it's raining on this side, you have sunshine on this side, and they're your sunshine.
I have my sunshine, and I lean on them every day, including today, too. We've been talking with Dr. Deborah Dennie, principal of Leonardtown Middle School in St. Mary's County, Maryland. Thanks for encouraging us today.
Thank you for having me.
Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis.
An awesome lineup of educators today. AJ Juliani showed us that we don't have to wait for expensive vendors. Educators can now build their own AI-powered data tools. And 150 of them did exactly that. Their minds were blown, and honestly, so was I. Victoria Setaro remind us that the cold data, the numbers, the test scores, attendance rates, are only half the story. The warm data, the human stories behind those numbers, is where the real action lives. That student who was a straight A compliant overachiever but secretly hated her courses, you'd never know that without asking. That's warm data. And Dr. Deborah Dennie proved that data-driven leadership isn't about spreadsheets. It's about classic car shows and Miss Maryland and a food service worker who became a principal's secretary. It's about seeing people and growing them. So here's what I want you to take away from today's show. Data-driven does not mean data only. The best data-driven schools are the most human schools because the data frees us up to see what matters and act on it. So this week, I encourage you, pick just one thing. Pick one piece of data you already have, attendance, grades, a quick exit ticket, and ask the warm data question. Why is this happening? Then have a conversation with a student or a colleague about what you find. And that's where the change starts. And remember what Dr. Dennie said, find your sunshine. Find that person who has your back. When it's raining on one side, they're your sunshine on the other. Because all this work is hard, but it matters more than we'll ever know. You can find this episode at coolcatteacher.com/data-driven. Educator, your job is so important, and we all need to strive to be remarkable educators. Thank you for listening to Cool Cat Teacher Talk. I hope you tune in next week right here on this station. See you later, educator.
Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis. Thank you for listening to today's show. You can find the show notes at coolcatteacher.com. Thank you for listening to Cool Cat Teacher Talk. Tune in on this station next week for another episode. This is John Davis, your producer. See you later, educator.